Guardian Metal Resources is a strategic development and mineral exploration company focused on Nevada. It's dual listed here in the UK and the States, and it's entered into a binding letter of intent to acquire an option for the acquisition of a tungsten mine and mill. To talk about this and the wider investment landscape, I'm delighted to be joined by the Chief Executive, Oliver Friesen. So, Oliver, I'm speaking to you in Halloween week, and this week has been frightful for the mining sector. General election in the UK, government uncertainty, waiting for the autumn budget to be delivered, a myriad of excuses. Is the mining sector just out of favour, irrespective of the political landscape, do you think?
Yeah, well, I mean, just on the frightfulness of this week, I think it's maybe a little less frightful today that the budget yesterday wasn't as bad as I think people has anticipated, and specifically AIM investors and looking at, I think, the capital gains tax, which I think probably affects most people and what they look at the most closely. So to see that only a pretty minor increase in this capital gains tax was applied, I think certainly gives investors and speculators a bit more assurance as to what the future looks like when it comes to at least the tax regime here in the UK. When it comes to the mining sector, I mean, I am incredibly bullish on mining. A lot of people that I listen to and that I follow podcasts and just deep kind of thinkers and influencers in the kind of global financial space, it seems to be pretty conclusive that the commodities and the companies that explore and develop and mine these commodities are historically undervalued. When you look at the actual price of obviously gold being sort of the bellwether of the industry, but you look at a lot of the base metals as well, there's a lot of strength in commodity prices. And it's really just taking the sector and really it's the majors that kind of catch on first because they're the ones producing and actually realizing the increase in revenue. But that trickles all the way through. So the UK historically has always been, I've got to be careful what I say here because I live here in the UK and that's the market we're focused on, but it's been a bit of a laggard. And what happens is as we move into a new bull cycle, the Canadians and the Canadian market typically lead the way. Australia is typically not too far behind, and then the UK market does pick up and kind of catches on. But if you look at some of the Canadian names, a lot of raises are being done. They're oversubscribed. Share prices are moving up very nicely to the up and to the right. So we're seeing what we want to see, which is Canada kind of taking the lead, but the rest of the market in the UK will certainly follow suit. So I think we're in for a really exciting few years here, and the setup is fantastic.
Okay, that's a lovely, uplifting way to start our conversation. But to be fair, your share price is bucking the trend. What do you put that down to?
Well, it has been bucking the trend. We've had a really nice run since the IPO, but we have pulled back now. So I think it's a very kind of natural move to go as you have a progression upwards. It kind of comes back a little bit, and people consolidate, and certain people sell out. But it gives new investors the chance to move in before what we're working on, which is that next wave up. But how did we buck that trend? There's probably multiple reasons for that. One of the main ones is the fact that we have really large and supportive shareholders. So our free float in the Guardian Metals stock is quite low. But more importantly, we've been driving value with exploration spend. We're an exploration first business. I'm an exploration geologist by trade. So we've been taking the money that we raised at the IPO and at subsequent levels and applying that to our assets in the ground. And we delivered some really fantastic results. We've had very exciting drilling result news from our flagship asset only a few weeks ago. So we're adding value, driving value in the ground. We have a really, really strong supportive shareholder base. And we've been really getting out there on our soapbox, marketing, getting the story out there, talking about all the reasons why investors should get exposure to tungsten, which is the metal that we're focused on. And really, the tungsten story is just getting started here. And we think there's some fantastic and really exciting things that are about to happen in this space. And we've positioned ourselves for that big move that we think is coming.
Okay, we'll talk about Pilot Mountain, your flagship asset, in a moment. Let's talk about this week's news, all to do with that option. You have 90 days to do your due diligence, I believe, and decide if you want to buy it. So what is it about this mine and mill that has made you consider it in the first place?
Yeah, of course. So, as I mentioned, we've really established ourselves as a tungsten exploration and development company focused in the US and focused in Nevada. Now, what that means is since we acquired our flagship asset, 4 years we've spent really understanding the tungsten space and more importantly, having a lot of conversations and forging relationships with different parties and players within the tungsten space or somehow are connected to the tungsten space, and specifically in the US, but also globally. So, what that means is that we've within our stable, we have a lot of really fantastic relationships, which are affording certain opportunities to the Pilot Mountain project, which can support the exploration and development and the progression of that asset, and ultimately moving it up the value curve. But we have strategy sessions as a board at Guardian Metal Resources, and we're not happy with mediocrity. We have grander ambitions. We look at where we're at now. We're at, call it a $40 million US dollar market cap. How do we get to that next level? What does that next level look like, and what are the things that we need to do to achieve that? We're not sitting here with our, kind of hands on our butt and just saying, we're happy with the progress we've made, and we'll continue to kind of just truck along here. We have grander ambitions. So when we looked at that strategy session and said, how do we get from here to where we need to go? Well, continue to advance Pilot Mountain, continue on that development timeline with that asset, which is, as we've discussed, I'm sure, believed to be the largest undeveloped tungsten deposit in the U.S. But then how do we find things that can be accretive to that? Obviously, Pilot Mountain continues to move up that value curve, but we looked at other assets in the state of Nevada and within North America. And really, with what's happened in the antimony space quite recently, Sarah, which is the export bans out of China, there's a lot of speculation now that the same export bans could come out of China affecting tungsten. So what we're hearing now, and kind of the whisperings are that there's other groups now looking throughout the United States to get position within this tungsten space. So with the relationships that we already had, we didn't want to sit on our hands and as I described it before, let someone in and come in and just take our lunch, right? We put ourselves in the driver's seat in the tungsten space. So let's take advantage of that, and let's get ourselves even more positioned for what we think is going to come here. So we looked at other assets in the state of Nevada and within North America more broadly, and this one just checked all of our boxes. Now, obviously, we've signed the LOI, which allows us to do the 90-day due diligence, so we need to work through that before we sign the definitive agreement. But really, it's a call option, right? The expenditures and the cash outlay at the front end are quite minimal. But ultimately, the vendor shares in the success and the upside as we continue to progress the asset, which is fantastic because we are aligned as the optioner and the optionee. So this asset, it's accretive. It's something that we can push alongside Pilot Mountain. And importantly, as I mentioned, we can take a lot of these really good relationships that we've forged within the tungsten space and then look to leverage those as a way to increase value at Tempaiute alongside Pilot Mountain. So it's about how do we get from where we're at now, 40 million, to that next level up, and accretive assets like this to complement our existing offering, we think are a very prudent way to get there much more quickly.
So, in terms of Tempaiute, I was just wondering, should all the due diligence really tick all those boxes, as you said? Can you afford to buy it? Would it really reduce overheads, or would it need quite a bit of care to get it up to speed? How has the previous owner looked after it, or the current owner?
The current owner, yeah, no, of course. I mean, first and foremost, absolutely, we can afford it. I encourage listeners to go and review the RNS to see how we've structured that deal. Like I said, it's light on the front end and it escalates, and there's a bonus payment for success to the vendor. And that's how we want to do deals. We want the vendor and us to be aligned in the success of that asset. So Absolutely, we can afford this asset. The other thing is, we will now, as we work through the DD period, there's a lot of potential sort of value levers, as I call them, on this asset. So there's existing high-grade stockpiles that exist across the property. On top of that, there's a very sizable tailings facility about 2 kilometers away from the existing mill. So we've sampled that. We've sampled these high-grade dumps. So there's a lot of work that's been done and was done back in the late 1980s, and they kind of packed up shop quite quickly at the time when China flooded the market with tungsten. So now we're coming to, here we are in 2024, and the landscape for tungsten, and specifically for defense metals in the US, has never, ever been better than it is right now. So we can pick up where they left off, so to say. So when it comes to expenditures, we've always been prudent about how we spend money. We don't overspend. We want to make sure that we look at our working capital budget and have ample runway. And that's certainly the case. But as I mentioned, there's ways that we can leverage the existing relationships that we have in the US to help garner further support for this project. Now, once again, we are just in the LOI stage. We need to get that DD period done. But further to that, to the signing of that definitive, if we do go that route, which we certainly believe we will, then pulling some of those levers to find other ways to get support, whether that's financial or just community support for that project. We have the ability to do that because of the time and effort we've spent in the tungsten space over the last several years.
Okay, but we are approaching the end of this year, the end of 2024. Have you achieved what you set out to do this year?
Yeah, I mean, we certainly have. It's been a very busy year. There's been a lot of really important milestones at Guardian Metal Resources. We are only been listed in the UK for about a year and a half now, so we're still kind of a new story. But we've really created a name for ourselves. We did things our way in 2024. We did raises that made sense for our shareholders. Some of those were done at a premium. We launched our first ever inaugural drill program at Pilot Mountain. We achieved the best ever drill results that's ever been achieved at Pilot Mountain. We're talking over 40 meters of just north of 1% tungsten equivalent. That's one of the best tungsten drill holes across the globe for quite some years, as far as I've come across. So, yeah, we've had a lot of success, but really, I would say that we're just getting started, Sarah. Like I said, we're still a new company, and adding Tempaiute to the fold and all those the kind of value levers we think we can pull with that asset, and with a lot of the catalysts coming that we've been discussing, we really truly do believe that we're just getting started here. So the story, we're still early days. We've had success, but 2025 I think is going to be a lot more exciting for the company as we look to achieve some of these further catalysts and goals that we've set out for ourselves, but also really allowing the market to wake up to tungsten, to see the things that we've been seeing and talking about. We think that's going to happen in a significant way in 2025, and the market will go, oh, wait a second, you guys were right. You position yourselves for this incredible kind of move in the tungsten space that we do truly believe is going to happen. So really successful year, but we're just getting started, and I cannot wait to see what 2025 has in hold for us.
So what is going to happen in 2025? Are we talking about production? Do you see yourself becoming a producer?
Production in 2025 would probably be a bit too lofty of a goal. Near term production, we potentially could look at the tailings that I mentioned at Tempaiute, the high grade stockpile. That's material that's kind of there and ready for the taking. I don't want to make any promises about what we're going to do with that material, but that's just a point to make, is that those type of opportunities are certainly looked at as kind of more near term production type scenario. So a lot of work still needs to be done there. But when it comes to Pilot Mountain, we've talked about the timeline for that asset. The reality is the US market, the powers that be, we need to get this project, Pilot Mountain, as close to production ready or into production as quickly as possible, because the US needs a homegrown source of tungsten. So what we're going to do in 2025 is continue to move the asset, advance it as quickly as we can to that production scenario. That's going to involve the PFS as we've signaled to the market, the completion of the drilling we're doing now, further exploration across that asset, and then Tempaiute. There's a lot that we can do there, and there's a lot of information and data that we have access to, which obviously has us really excited about the potential there. So 2025, I would say, look out for just a lot of advancement on the Pilot Mountain front. Once again, with Tempaiute, if we are successful through the DD period, we'll sign the definitive, and we'll be looking to advance that asset alongside Pilot Mountain. And really, our goal here is to be a significant player in the U.S. tungsten space. We don't want to just supply 5, 10, 15% of the United States annual needs. We have a much loftier goal than that. And the acquisition of this LOI for the Tempaiute property is a really important step along that goal. Of what we're trying to do here is to be a significant player and significant producer of tungsten to the U.S. market. So lofty goal, but we have the team here, and we've forged the relationships. I think we can have a lot of success as we continue to push towards that ultimate goal.
Okay, so US elections this coming week. Are you keeping an eye on the result? You don't care? Doesn't matter who wins?
Yeah, I mean, I'd be lying if I said I didn't have an eye on the results. Certainly, it's something that a lot of investors have asked myself and our team is, how do you view the election? I think that the great thing, there's a lot of companies who are either leveraged to one party getting in over the other. I would say, potentially, I would say Trump is probably more pro-mining. That's probably an obvious statement. So being an exploration and potentially a mining company in the state of Nevada, there's probably certain things that Trump would support over the Democrats. But I think just in general, and more importantly than that, first of all, we don't really take political sides here at Guardian Metal Resources. That's not our job. But what I can say is that this sort of onshoring need and really the desire to diversify supply chains away from China, to support the U.S. military, to support the U.S. energy infrastructure companies, the fusion companies. This is a bipartisan issue. And all the appropriations that have come to support domestic exploration development properties in Nevada, in the state, in the United States, have come from the Democrats. They've been from the appropriations outset by President Biden over the last 4 years. So it is a bipartisan issue. Regardless of who gets in, the U.S. needs to onshore its critical and defense metal supply chains, and that is exactly what we're looking to do. So we're watching the elections, but regardless of who gets in, we really believe that this narrative will continue to hold true, and either administration will understand the importance of it, and that will lead to support for projects and companies like Guardian Metal Resources.
Okay, two more quick questions, if I may,
Yeah, of
please,
course.
Oliver. Just to use one of your phrases, making a name for ourselves. Well, it's not just one name, but it's two names since you IPO'd. So what was the logic behind the name change in July? Pretty quick after just listing on the market.
Yeah, no, I mean it's funny because when we first put this company together 4 years ago when I moved to the UK, it was going to be a gold exploration company, and the reason for that is Nevada is kind of the home of gold in the U.S. and the northern part of Nevada specifically has just fantastic gold mines that are owned mostly by Barrick and Newmont. So we put Golconda Summit into the portfolio, which we still own to this day, and it's a fantastic asset with tremendous gold potential. But then we shortly after that acquired Pilot Mountain. It hosted what we believe to be the largest tungsten deposit in the U.S. Really, that was acquired for the kind of the exploration upside for the copper potential, because at the time, tungsten was very unknown. Since then, as I mentioned, the last kind of 3.5 years of really understanding the tungsten space, I've become more and more and more bullish on that metal and where we think it's going to go. So it became quite clear quickly, actually. And as things started to sort of geopolitical tensions started to rise, tungsten really started to get a lot of attention. And I don't want to say that, it was all kind of skill and whatever it is to acquire that asset. I mean, a lot of it was just luck. That kind of 2 years later, the focus really shifted to onshoring, reshoring. It looked, a lot of the tension started to flip to tungsten and the importance of that metal in defense and other technologies. So, we understand that we have an asset that has significant applications and implications for national security. There's no two ways about it. So really, we wanted to pay homage to that, and change the name from Golden, which implies that we're an exploration company of just gold, to, hey, we're actually an exploration development company of a really important military metal, in tungsten. Now, tungsten is used for a lot more than just military, but that's really a key demand driver right now. So we figured it would be prudent, to change the name to something that is more fitting for the tungsten angle that we're certainly working with. And obviously, Tempayut is further confirmation of the importance of tungsten and our desire to be a significant tungsten player in the US.
Let's end how we started, because right at the beginning of this conversation, you were bigging up the oversubscribed placings in Canada. Therefore, does it not make sense to have a supplementary listing and ride the wave of optimism that you're suggesting exists in Canada and the UK has yet to catch up on?
Yeah, I mean, that's honestly, Sarah, a question I get probably every day is, and when I'm on calls, I'm on a lot of calls lately with Americans and Canadians, really trying to get this story out. And almost every conversation starts with, okay, you're Canadian, you have a listing in London of assets in Nevada. Explain that. So I'm forced to try to explain how that all came together. Now, we love the UK market. There's a lot of complaints about the UK market. We think it's a fantastic market. There's a lot of great retail investors here who are passionate about mining, about junior mining. There's been a lot of great success stories here. It's sad to see a lot of names leave for what they consider to be greener pastures. And there's certainly frustrating days here in the UK market, but there's also frustrating days in Canada and in Australia as well. With that being said, we already have dual listed on the OTCQX. That's certainly a stepping stone into North America. Some of the feedback that we do get on calls is, well, our mandate is really, we don't invest kind of in UK domiciled or listed companies. Sorry, not domiciled, but companies whose main listing is AIM. They want to invest in North American stock exchanges. So we've taken that on board. We're certainly open to what the future looks like for this company when it comes to kind of commercial steps. Ultimately, we want to make sure that the biggest audience can get access to our stock, that they can easily buy it. So, we're looking at other options as well to support that endeavor. I won't say too much now as to what kind of the next steps could look like. You mentioned a Canadian listing. There's also, obviously, there's more senior listings in the US as well. So, we have some things kind of happening behind the scenes, a lot of discussions ongoing as to how we manage that the best way possible. But I just want to assure UK listeners, this is our home market. If anything, what we're looking to do is find ways to get onto supplementary markets in North America that will give those investors easier access to the stock, which only serves to benefit our UK supporters who have been with us since day one. We very much appreciate the support. So just looking at ways to further bolster their offering in North America. So I'll leave it at that. I won't say too much more. But it's certainly on our mind. It's something we certainly talk about quite often as a board as to how we manage the next commercial steps and getting further exposure to investors in North America.
You certainly are very loyal indeed. Oliver Friesen, Chief Executive of Guardian Metal Resources, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sarah.